Hello everyone, welcome again to my channel. Today we're going to talk about preseason in football soccer teams. This was suggested by a viewer in Spanish who asked me, and I'm going to try to do it through three different methodologies of training. Okay, more traditional one and the two more contemporary ones. So I'm going to try to do it as usual, as brief as possible and as simple as possible, because especially the ones who are not physical trainers, who do not have experience working with physical trainers, maybe it's going to be kind of complicated to understand it completely, okay? I'm going to try the best as I can to make it as simple and as easy as possible. So normally planning or periodization in sports, and especially in football, soccer, went through different stages. It started a long time ago, many years ago, from sports that were related to track and field and athletics. Like, for example, especially based on the Soviet school, who was really advanced in this area, and they started applying the type of planning and structure of preparation similar to what they used to do in individual and track and field sports. So Matveyev was the first author, then Verkhoshansky came after that, both from the Soviet school, and then Tudor Bomba was a little bit more recent. And then the three more recent schools, ATR model by Isurin and Kaverin, which is more based on traditional type of training, similar or more advanced, an evolution from the past three that I just mentioned. And then we have the structured microcycle, which kind of breaks a little bit the traditional way of training, which from Francisco Ceirulo, the famous physical trainer for several decades of Football Club Barcelona, a great professor from Barcelona, Spain. And we have a tactical periodization from Professor Víctor Frade, another brilliant mind, which is one of the contemporary methodologies used, okay? Just so that you have an idea. The structural microcycle, you can see it is used most commonly in Spanish teams, Spanish staff, or coaching staff, and also, teams like Barcelona, of course, and of course, Manchester City in Premier League. They use structural microcycle with Lorenzo Buenaventura and, of course, the head coach Pep Guardiola. And tactical periodization is probably the most commonly used in a Premier League. Of course, its most famous exponent was Jose Mourinho, but it's mainly used in most of the teams in Premier League, the majority, I would say. For example, Liverpool, where Jurgen Klopp, his two assistants are from students that studied with Professor Víctor Frade. Okay, we're going to go into explanation. So the preseason, the traditional way of, we're going to focus on the ATR. It generally begins by dividing itself into two phases, stages or subperiods. Although it is divided in two phases, it actually divides itself in like three types of microcycles or weeks of work, okay? The first period will be just a general preparation period, and it's normally, the characterization of this period is that it's basically focused on physical loads, very big physical loads. The volume increases progressively during this stage. Consequently, the intensity is not very high, using a small number of special exercises. So we're going to work specifically on general exercises and even less competitive exercise tasks, okay? And then we have a second period, which is a period of preparation of special training. In this stage, specific exercises predominate. Consequently, the volume of the load decreases and the intensity increases, seeking the optimal preparation to achieve better performance. It actually is going to divide itself into three types of microcycles, okay, that normally you can use by two microcycles or by one microcycle, however you prefer, or however I have used normally in preseason by two morphocycles, because most of the times preseason used to last around 6 weeks. So I'm going to explain each one. So accumulation microcycles are going to be the definition, and you're going to try to increase motor potential that will serve as future specific foundation, focus on individual and collective weaknesses, okay? So, and the accumulation microcycles, basically the components or the capacities to develop are basic strength, resistance strength, maximum strength, basic speed, frequency, length, stride, basic resistance, and aerobic capacity. In other words, just to simplify it, in accumulation microcycles, you're going to focus on strength, resistance, aerobic resistance, and speed of base. Okay, so you want to try to give the base, the general exercises of these three capacities, okay? So the load dynamics is going to be high volume, so we're going to have sessions are going to be longer, and moderate intensity. So intensity is not going to be high, okay? It's going to be moderate, okay? So in the accumulation microcycle, basically what we're going to try to work is on all the three capacities, the base, to give a foundation for the player, okay, during the preseason. And the means usually used general exercises to direct it, okay? But normally there are general exercises. Later we're going to explain what are general exercises, although we mentioned them in the past video, okay? The transformation microcycles transform motor potential or technical capacity and specific preparation, develops specific necessary of footballer according to necessity of footballer according to position, specific the capacities that we're going to work. Now we're going to work a little bit more specific to the game, okay? So specific strength, elastic and explosive strength, resistance, speed, specific acceleration, action, strain, speed, resistance, okay? The low dynamic, now the volume is going to go a little bit lower now than the first microcycles of accumulation, and the intensity is going to go a little bit higher. It's going to be medium high, okay? And the means used, normally we're going to go from directed tasks or exercises to more specific tasks or exercises, okay? So now the task is going to be a little bit more with more components of the game, okay? And in the last realization microcycles, okay, so that's why it's called ATR, accumulation, transformation, realization. Now it's going to be totally specific, okay? So now the definition uses specific motor capacity within specific competitive actions, obtain best results available within preparation period, okay? The capacity, specific competition strength, specific competition resistance, specific competition speed, okay? So now we're going to focus on speed, resistance, and strength, and the specific competition components of these capacities or areas, okay? Low dynamic, now the volume is going to go radically low now, very low, and the intensity is going to be really high, okay? Maximum to high intensity, okay? So the volume is going to go low, but in preseason maybe we can train with a high volume. If we're doing, you're going to see in the example, morning and afternoon sessions, maybe you can have between the two sessions 3 hours, 3 hours and a half. In the realization sessions, the volume is going to go way down, okay? It's going to be maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours with counting both sessions, okay? And the means used, we're going to use competition exercises, okay? Specific competition exercises. And the description of each one. Accumulation block or microcycles, okay, or microcycle if you want to do. General toning exercises along with some more specific or directed exercises given the period of high volume and low intensity. In the accumulation block, you will introduce most general exercises. It is focused on creating a residual physical foundation on which you will continue to work along the season. You will perform strength, resistance, and general speed exercises along with some more specific or directed exercises of free weights or machines. The most commonly utilized method will be to work them at a high volume and low intensity. I forgot, a team that uses this method, that is very famous physical trainer, he's a fellow countryman of mine. His name is Oscar Ortega, and he's a physical trainer of Atletico Madrid. So Atletico Madrid use ATR as far as I know, okay? The longer this accumulation cycle is, the greater the residual effect of the benefits obtained. In the first microcycle carried out in the season, the accumulation part must be greater than in the subsequent ones. The reason is that you already have a better physical base. According to Navarro and Rivas, the strength program must be supplemented by aerobic work to improve the exudative and contractile potentials of the muscle, okay? Now we're going to go into transformation block. In the transformation block, now this is going to be a little bit more specific. Like I said, lower volume, a little bit higher intensity, more specific tasks or exercises, more similar to football, although not competitive, okay? So in the transformation block, exercises will become more specific, focusing on power, strength, resistance, oxidative capacity, maximum strength. We will focus on more technical aspects. The volume will gradually decrease as the quality and intensity grow, okay? So these would, you're going to see in the example, the physical trainer that you're going to see the example, he's going to, in the preseason 6 weeks, he's going to use 2 microcycles or weeks of work with accumulation, 2 with transformation, and the last 2 with realization, okay? And the realization block, the training will be more specific and brief, where we will try to transfer the volume of work to specific exercises. We will not focus a lot on volume or accumulate fatigue, but rather on transferring and giving the footballers rest so that the supercompensation curve goes up, letting the athletes reach the highest peak near competition, okay? Generally, at the end of the preseason, we will play several friendly competitions whose purpose will be to increase the specific and competitive nature of the exercises and thus increase the intensity of the training. I want to indicate, the author says, who wrote this article, who I decided to show it because it's very very easily designed, very simple to understand, and it's very good. I want to indicate here that we must move away from old precepts where it was indicated that the load dynamics of the preseason serve to prepare the entire season. A professional player today loses, in general terms, very physical adaptations in the transition period. The preseason should seek to recover the level of these adaptations, individualized training sessions as much as possible, and prepare for the matches. Preseason planning proposal, and the author, which we're going to see, is Licenciado Salustiano Campusiano Lopez from Spain. In this case, the team was Real Murcia, which was at the time in second division in Spain, okay? The duration of the special conditional load volume is 45 to 50% of the total time that the preseason lasts. And as an example, I place here a normal, conventional way, the first one you see on the graph, on the higher part, on the top part, and on the bottom you're going to see the tactical periodization part. You're going to see how they're going to play around with the volume and the intensity. The volume will increase, the intensity will slowly increase as the season goes along. Once the intensity increases, the volume will go down, and of course the curve of supercompensation, the same thing, will act according to the recuperation and adaptation of the footballers, okay? So you're going to be always playing around with this according to the calendar. You will load, okay, and you will increase either the intensity or the volume or both, or one or the other, and the supercompensation curve will go backwards on the opposite way. And as the footballers adapt, you will release the load, you will lower the load, okay, so that they reach in the competition the optimum level, okay, physically and football-wise. This is the theory as far as conventional. As you see in tactical periodization, the volume starts normally a little bit lower in preseason because the players coming from inactivity, and then it reaches more or less the same level. Never play around with the volume in tactical periodization. We do adjust the intensity, so the intensity will go up at an optimum level, competition level, always maintain it throughout the whole season. And we're going to talk about why we do this, okay, in tactical periodization and the reasons. And as an anecdote, I can talk about something that I saw when I was living and working in Spain. When Jose Mourinho was coaching Real Madrid, there was a famous Spanish TV program. It's called El Chiringuito now. It had another name before. And they were talking about, the journalists were talking about that they had talked to the physical trainers of Barcelona, and that their theory of the physical trainers of Barcelona were saying that since they work with loads and the load dynamic, okay, they had a clear advantage in the second half of the tournament, and they were going to turn around the league and win it by a big difference compared to Mourinho, who used tactical periodization and didn't work with loads, you know, and loading, you know. And what really happened after was that Mourinho and Real Madrid won that league championship by many, many points, and this is not did not happen as they predicted. So, in other words, to show that football is really a complex sport, collective complex sport, and you cannot explain it just by one variable, okay, one reason, okay? It's very complex, and as Professor Frade says, the super tactical dimension is the most important one, and this is just another example. Okay, we're going to show the microcycles that this author uses, which is very clear. You're going to see then the first two microcycles are the accumulation period, okay, the two accumulation microcycles. You're going to see that besides the technical tests, the physical tests that you're going to place in the first session, you're going to see that all the sessions in the first week are all in the afternoon, technical, tactical with a coach, and in the morning with a head coach, and in the morning he's going to focus basically on resistance, aerobic resistance, and strength resistance, basic strength in the morning, except on Thursday, which they have off. They have a bath and massages. And Sunday, of course, you're going to see that they're going to focus basically on giving a base to the players, okay? The second week is the same. He's going to start In the afternoon, it's always technical, tactical work, and then he's going to start working on general strength, aerobic capacity, aerobic power. He's going to rest on Wednesday, and the same thing, general strength, aerobic resistance. So he's trying to give you the players, the footballers, a base, a foundation for the rest of the preseason, okay? Because they're coming off inactivity. This is the general theory. Then as it moves to the third microcycle from the 30th of July to the 6th of August, it's in Spanish, you're going to see that the transformation, you're going to see slightly it begins to change. So now the sessions in the afternoon are always the same, working technically and tactically with the head coach, but in the morning he starts working, especially during the middle of the week, he's going to start working more on an aerobic resistance. He's going to still keeps working strength, general strength, maximum strength, but he's going to start working maximum strength. He's going to start working a little bit more components of explosiveness, okay, and more similar to the real game, a little bit closer now. He's not going to work in so much general, okay? And the second transformations microcycle you're going to see, besides the work in the afternoon and the test on Tuesday, okay, you're going to see the first preseason match, which is done against the team from a lower level that the team was in at that time. On Wednesday and on Sunday, they have two friendly matches. And then he's going to start working more on explosive strength, lactic capacity, okay, mixed resistance, lactic capacity, general strength, so maximum strength and general strength. So now he's going to work more components, more explosiveness, and more specific to the real football, okay, the real activity. And then on the realization microcycles, you're going to see that the same thing, same way. In the afternoon, it's always technical, tactical, but he starts adding explosive strength in one of the sessions on Thursday, and also a friendly match on Wednesday against the same level team, and on Sunday. And then he's going to start focusing more on explosiveness, okay? So now he's going to work with an aerobic power, explosive strength, an aerobic capacity, resistance to explosive strength, okay? And on Friday, for example, anaerobic capacity, resistance to explosive strength, and anaerobic power. So he's going to start working more on components of explosiveness, like strength and speed and power, okay? And the last microcycle, he's going to do the same thing, but at the end of the week and middle of the week, he's going to start super compensating, because he's going to play on Sunday. It's going to be the first match. So they're going to have a test on Monday, and speed, reaction, speed, gestural speed, coordination, rest on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they have another friendly match against the team from the same level, okay? Rest on Thursday, so he's going to start compensating so that the natural biological defenses of the footballers start going up. That's basically super compensation, is that you're going to lower the load so that their defenses start rising, okay, so they reach optimum level when they're going to compete. And you're going to see that a lot of explosive and lactic work, okay, and aerobic capacity, coordination, speed, and aerobic power, and speed, reaction, and flexibility. Okay, but basically is playing around with the loads according to where the competition is going to be, going from a more general way to a more specific way, okay? Now, preseason according to the structured microcycle of Francisco Ceirulo. And we're going to see some quotes related to this, and some of them are very interesting. I don't understand physical preparation isolated from the game of football. Everything that is done on the pitch as physical training has to be linked to football and to tactical and cognitive interest, okay? In the youth, this is very important, especially for the ones who work in academies, okay? And this is one of the things that many people do not normally handle or manage, okay? In the youth sensible phases of the footballer from 12 to 18 years old, we may have to respect more the traditional concepts of preseason, season, and rest time or transitions. So this is normally the age where you develop the footballer so he can become a professional footballer, okay? I had the luck of having many professional footballers, coached them either in Spain, here in Norway, and this is very important, okay? So because this is where you're going to develop the footballer, okay? But in those who have been training for 6 or 7 years, their metabolic and adaptive organization to this form and shape of practice is already so continuous that to increase the level in that organization becomes very complicated. So in other words, to translate this, when the footballer is from 12 to 18 to 16, say 16, 17, 18 years old, we have to develop, because he is in the sensible phases, so we have to develop them with specific complementary work, developing, their strength, their resistance, aerobic resistance, their anaerobic capacities, lactic, especially the ones that are more related to the game, okay? Because their hormonal level is going to be a very high peak, okay? So if we don't do this, if the player is 19, 20 years old, we are not going to be able to develop in a high level especially their strength and speed, okay, and explosiveness. So this is something that we have to have very clear, and we have to work a lot on this, okay? Besides, of course, the game, which is the most important thing, okay? So this will be complementary work. Once the player is a professional footballer, after 18, 19, 20 years old, he already has under his belt maybe 6, 7, 8 years of training. So when you go to preseason, you're not going to need a month and a half to get them into shape, because this past history of them, their past history is going to allow them to reach their peak very quickly. In a couple of weeks they will. 3 weeks maybe, 2 or 3 weeks. So, the preseason, like Vitor Frade, should be focused more on football sense, on football training, and not so much on specific physical training, okay? This is the explanation that Francisco Ceirulo gives. I had this argument with many colleagues of mine and who don't have maybe a lot of experience working with youth footballers. And, this is something that for me is very easy to see, because I've seen it personally many, many times, okay? When you're already in high competition, the preseason no longer makes sense. The child from the age of 6 has to be a football player and has to learn the motor skills of soccer: space, time, conditions, interpersonal relationships, and the wisdom of the game of soccer. It is impossible to think that working for a month and a half will serve you 9 months later, okay? I try to use soccer and football, people already know that people live in countries like Canada, United States, and Australia, they call it soccer. And of course, the rest of the world, we know it as football. Okay, according to this model, the footballer is seen as a mega structure made of many structures. So the football is going to be it's going to be a mega structure that has many structures. The conditional structure, of course, they are the aspects related to speed, strength, resistance, flexibility, relaxation. Socio-affective structure, they are interpersonal group relationships. Coordinative structure, ability to control movement, okay, coordination. Cognitive is related to the learning, okay, structure. The treatment of information by the player is considered. Creative expressive structure is a structure that consists of trying to bring out the originality of the player and all his knowledge. And emotive evolutionary structure aspect that deals with the identification of the player with expressing his emotions, okay? So this is how Ceirulo sees the footballer, okay? Now, as far as the tasks that we were talking about before, okay, to do this, we classify different levels of specificity in the task. And what we were talking about today in ATR is going to be related to this. And also, of course, we're going to show the structure microcycle Ceirulo. So a general task will be exercises that could be used for many sports. They don't have any, do not present any level of specificity with respect to the competition. For example, 1 hour on stationary bike, for example. That will be a general task. Specific tasks, they're more related to the game. So under the specific task, we have 4 types. The specific general task, exercise with a very low level of specificity. For example, 2 sets of 12 minutes at 70% heart rate of continuous running. Directed exercise with a slight similarity to competition, normally with a small transfer to the game, adding small technical elements with some decision making. For example, passing exercises or a rondo 4v1. Specific special exercises, similar to those at competition, but executed with variation, either in subsystems. Okay, subsystem is a term used in Spain. Okay, it's what in tactile position we call the scales, collective scales in group scale, individually, collectively, intersectorially. Okay, that will be a subsystems and systems, subsystems in Spanish methodology, with actions involving a smaller number of players. Example: 3 against 3 against 3 in structure. okay? And competitive, so specific competitive situations in small spaces. So the specificity of all the structure will also be high, but situations that simulate the pressure of the competition are introduced. Preseason planning, volume dynamic, effective training time should increase until the next to last week prior to competition. The preseason will last 4 to 5 weeks and is structured as follows. So, week 1 and 2, according to Cerulo, we're going to focus basically on resistance endurance training. Week 3, we're going to focus on strength training, okay? And the priority, okay, it's going to be strength training. And then week 4, the priority is going to be speed training, okay? Regarding intensity in the preseason, it begins low, and as the weeks go by, it will increase progressively until reaching a high volume, 70-80% of both specificity and maximum heart rate, but not maximum. The main objective of the preseason is to acquire a minimum level of competition. In no case will the preseason be able to charge batteries for the rest of the year. The old myth of loading high in preseason and in December, and half of the season, is discarded. This is because the rest period between seasons is not long enough to lose football shape. Therefore, it will be enough for training to reach a minimum level to return to an optimal state of physical condition for the competition. Okay, so the resting time that we're gonna have in between in the middle of the season is not going to be long enough for the footballers to lose shape. So it makes no sense loading again. Okay, endurance resistance training. Generally, resistance tasks will only be present in the first 2 weeks of preseason. Okay, so only we're going to work the first 2 weeks of the preseason, and these will consist of endurance activities that have little or no relationship to specific technical gestures or decision making in soccer. What we propose is based on 2 aspects: the average intensity of the match, 75 to 85% of heart rate, maximum heart rate, and B, the average of distance traveled, which will be 10 to 12 kilometers. Okay, so there you're going to see the volume of resistance training, 75 to 85% of maximum heart rate, 20 to 40 minutes, the maximum 85 to 100 of maximum heart rate, 5 to 15 minutes. Okay, the contents, as you're working with more professional levels or higher, closer to professional levels, the volumes are going to be a little bit at the end, a little bit higher. Okay, so contents, technical circuits with ball, it means, and the technical maximum will be technical circuits with progression, attacking combinations, no opposition. And the methods, medium and short interval method. Okay, and this is from Joan Solé. Okay, so they're showing you how to work normally these areas. Okay. During 90% of the season, resistance trainers will be integrated with soccer tests. So we're only going to focus on general work without general tasks in the first 2 weeks. The rest, all the endurance and resistance, aerobic resistance training, is going to be done with football tasks. Okay, to manage the intensity that our players carry out during possession or different exercises, we must take into account some of the resources that the coach has to shape the components of the load. Decrease possession time, reduce the number of technical actions, decrease the number of players while maintaining space, increase numerical superiority, increase the number of players, and reduce the space. Okay. Criteria for tasks depending on the type of resistance we want to work on. So aerobic capacity, duration of the effort from 6 to 30 minutes, intensity from 75 to 90% of maximum heart rate, from 75 to 85 of maximum aerobic velocity or the aerobic threshold, okay? And the accumulation of lactate, it will be from 2 millimoles to 4, okay? The aerobic power, duration of the effort from 3 to 6 minutes, intensity 90 to 100% of maximum aerobic velocity, maximum heart rate, 85 to 115% of maximum aerobic velocity, 4 to 8 millimoles of lactate accumulation. Lactate maintenance, duration of the effort from 40 seconds to 2 minutes, intensity 100% of maximum heart rate from 105 to 120, from 7 to 9 millimoles. Okay, so normally that's a little bit high already, lactate accumulation. And lactate production, duration of the effort from 20 to 40 seconds, intensity 100% of the maximum aerobic velocity again. Okay, and now we're going to have more than 10 millimoles. So lactate accumulation will be when a footballer is doing an effort of high intensity for long periods of time. Okay, the body, the organism starts creating this residual substance that can be not removed, but reutilized again, which is lactate. Okay, and normally when the intensity is very high in a match, this can happen. So we want the player also to be prepared when these situations happen. Okay, when they occur in a match. Strength. In the graph, you can see which are the manifestations of strength and how they are worked. The character of the task is how close it will be to the competition. Okay, so the type of task for strength will be general resistance, maximum strength, muscular conditioning, and the contents will be, using body weight or free weights or machines. The directed type of exercise for strength will be strength power, resistance to explosive movements, and how we're going to do them with circuits, with jumps, movements, combat, shooting, technique, and all decision making. You're going to see, if you see Barcelona, or if you see, for example, Manchester City, you're going to see when they do these circuits, you're going to see, you're going to understand what are they doing by reading this. So special exercises or tasks will be specific resistance to explosive movements and how they do it, technical and tactical situations, possessions and positional exercises, and competitive, okay, which will now a competitive type of task or exercise. When we work in strength, will be specific resistance to fast strength, specific matches or games with competitive tactical situations, okay? During the first 2 weeks of preseason, general and directed tasks will occupy 50%, while during the season, only 10%, okay? Which will generally be covered by warm-up. So you're going to see this a lot again in the when you see videos of training sessions of Manchester City or Barcelona, where they're doing these types of circuits. Okay, this is the reason they're working strength. Okay, and you're going to see more or less by the type of circuit what period they're in. Remember that this part of general training will only be 10% of the part of the training even in preseason. So the volume is going to be very low, okay? And basically, this is a methodology that uses a lot, very similar to tacticalization. We're going to use football as a way of obtaining football shape or physical shape, however you want to call it. Strength, speed, everything is strength according to Julio Toes, disciple of Francisco Cerulo, and also a physical trainer of Antonio Conte. Speed, as we know, it is a traditional concept of players' ability to cover a distance in the shortest possible time. Is not applicable to competitive reality. Speed is nothing more than a manifestation of strength. Okay, so according to Cerulo and this school, strength and speed are linked. When I studied over 20 years ago, we learned that they were cousins, they're related. Okay, so strength for us is related to explosive movement, speed and explosive movement, quickness, speed, and explosive movements. Okay, explosive strength and maximum strength, when they come together in coordination to execute actions at the highest possible time. The actions reflect all the strength manifestations closely related to the technical, tactical, and psychological aspects of football, soccer. We can also call them as game strength, or football strength. The objective, rather than accentuating the training in certain manifestations of strength, is to provide situations which the greatest number of strength-related actions are carried out. Somehow the player is trained to perform in situations that are close to real ones as possible. So the types of tasks of strength aim at special strength speed, for example, solving counter-attacking situations with 3v3 in short amount of time, aimed at competitive strength speed, 4-against-4 matches with goalkeepers, okay? These are specific tasks of strength, okay? Types of speed now. Speed reaction, discrimination, training system by fractions or by repetitions, decision-making, individual tactics, and counterattack contents, okay? Gestural speed, fraction or by repetitions, special strength, and movement and speed will be fraction or by repetitions or by intervals also, counterattacking individually or as a team or with a team or by groups. Speed resistance, ability to repeat accelerations, reaching maximum speed with intermediate guidelines that allow maximum intensity again, restoring the substrates of the lactic anaerobic pathway required for that effort. Endurance speed, ability to maintain movements at a maximum or sub-maximum speed, and rapid endurance strength, ability to maintain and execute optimal rapid strength or quick strength or fast strength actions despite muscle fatigue, okay? The planning of the technical tactical tasks will depend on the game model and the defensive or offensive strategies that we want to follow. Okay, and this is very important what Seirulo mentions about this type of training. He says, the quality in traditional terms predominant for football soccer is resistance to strength and speed, explosive movements. Okay? That kind of quality recovers very quickly, and you can be training it all year. Okay, this is the reason why in Europe they're able to play 3 matches a week, while in South America they have problems playing 1. Okay, because the type of methodology used for training is based on explosive movements, resistance to strength and speed. Okay. Whereas if we were doing the traditional resistance aerobic training cycle, we would have a lot of trouble maintaining it throughout the season with 3 matches per week, okay? So this is the explanation that training this way, the sessions are going to be shorter and the recovery is going to be quicker, okay? And you're going to be able to train this way and play matches at the same time, okay? Because you're going to be working on other areas, okay? Like the lactic area, which you can recover immediately. Okay, preseason according to tactical periodization of Professor Vito Frade. Okay, there is no preseason based on the physical dimension as it has been done traditionally for tactical periodization, because there is no scientific evidence that the fact of carrying out preseason in a conventional way improves the game of soccer or football. Prioritizing physical or conditional aspects based on individual sports of track and field really make no sense, okay? Physical shape will be acquired throughout the acquisition of our playing game model and based on pedagogical principles throughout the entire season. The physical dimension consequently becomes a non-central aspect, and the tactical supra-dimension will be the one that regulates the whole process, always respecting and basing ourselves on the principle of horizontal alternation and specificity. Okay, so the super principles are the one that can guide the whole process in football, because throughout the supra-dimension, the tactical supra-dimension, we're going to see the other dimensions, like the physical, the technical, the psychological, okay? Football soccer shape is not physical. Form is much more than that. A physical dimension is the least important in the acquisition of sports shape. Without organization and talent in exploring a game model, the deficiencies are explicit, although they have little to do with physical form. Okay, this is a quote made famous by Jose Mourinho. The playing model. The game model can be considered as a set of behaviors idealized by us that we want our team to perform during a match. Within all the dimensions that football present, being tactical, technical, psychological, physical, among others that can be also be included in these, or can be valued as these, for example, of the affective and social dimensions. The game model of each team will be unique, unfinished, unrepeatable, and in constant evolution, okay? So every coach has a game model, even though maybe sometimes they don't know they do, okay? I think it is important to define the image I want to give when I talk about strength, endurance, and speed in soccer. The traditional concepts that we can find in books or training methodology are general and far from what I think they should be. I don't perceive strength, resistance, and speed from a quantitative point of view, but contextualized to what football is and fundamentally to our way of playing. This is another famous quote by Jose Mourinho, okay? So here we have the methodological principles, the supra principle of specificity, and the principle of unbreakable wholeness, okay? The supra principle is not a pedagogical principle, although many people confuse it as such, and it's really a super principle that's present in everything, okay? The principle of unbreakable wholeness, it considers football soccer as a whole and not as the sum of the parts. The nature of the game itself evidence that skills and abilities should not be trained or assessed as individual compartments, okay? So the principle of unbreakable wholeness, not only we're going to see the game as a whole, but we're also going to be see the process of the training process as a whole as well, okay? The principle, and now we have the 3 pedagogical principles, okay, that we use in order for us to teach in tactical position. The principle of complex progression. Add or subtract complexity according to the acquisition of the habit. This is where the trainer's expertise to hierarchy or prioritize principles and to articulate them grows in importance, okay? So we're going to always prioritize according to the complexity, from more simple to more complex, or not only in the sessions, but also in the game model and throughout the whole year, or the whole cycle. The principle of propensities or propensions, search for a determined situation so that it's repeated many times, trying to create the liberating habit or automatism, okay? So it's doing about know-how, you know. In other words, we're trying to stimulate the know-how of the footballer for him or her to be able to solve the situations over and over again, different ones, okay? An example I always give is that, for example, my players is that, for example, if you're going to play a match, a 30-minute match or 40-minute match, and you want to, for example, I don't know, see the 1v1 of a forward or the defender, that situation in a real match, in a 30-minute match, maybe you're going to see it once or twice or three times in that match. While if you're going to do it, if you create a task and create context, so that situation comes out or shows over and over again, you can do maybe 20 or 30 repetitions. So this is the main difference, okay? The principal propensions or propensities, the main difference is that we're going to be able to repeat over and over again in real context an action or a situation that we want the footballers to learn. And the principle of horizontal alternation and specificity, alternate the dominant from training to training and not between exercises of the same session. It is in charge of regulating the relationship between effort and recovery. So it's going to give us basically the shape of the week of work. Okay, complex progression principle, assembly, disassembly of the principles and the meso, micro, nano principles and their hierarchy during the weekly pattern and throughout the weekly patterns depending on the evolution of the team. The complexity of the sessions will vary depending on the session during the week. In the tension session, the complexity of the exercises will be low due to the intensity of the exercises. In the lower intensity sessions is where the complexity of the exercise will increase. The complexity will increase as the sessions and weeks of work go by and all the macro, meso, micro, and nano principles are being acquired. Principle of propensities, density of the principles, macro, meso, micro, and nano principles that are intended to be trained and the type of effort subdynamics required on each day of the week. We will try to repeat certain exercises over and over again, the principle that we want to be acquired. Through systematic repetition, we will seek that the principles are acquired on a regular basis. Okay, the principle of horizontal alternation specificity basically is giving shape to the whole morphocycle or week of work, where we're going to have a rest session after the match, then we're going to have a recovery session the day after the rest day, then we're going to have 3 acquisition sessions, which will be the tension of the muscle contraction, the duration of the muscle contraction, and speed of the muscle contraction, and then we're going to have a match preparation session before the match, where later we will have the match again, a real match, a competition. So we're always going to be playing around with this, and each session will have a subdynamic where we're playing around with the spaces, the intensity, the complexity, and the duration of the exercises, okay? And by doing this, we'll be, of course, impacting physically different muscle fibers and of course, different complexities that each task will have, okay? There are 4 types of tasks or exercises, always within the tacticalization. Fundamental exercise, this is very important, especially for the ones who want to use tacticalization, especially with youth footballers and also professional. Okay, we're going to have a fundamental exercise. We're going to have a compensation exercise, okay, where we're going to try to compensate either a problem that we may have or maybe a weakness or for example, working on strength or working on the speed of a footballer or whatever you think it is necessary at the moment. A complementary exercise, the same way. Also, we're going to work maybe on different capacities or whatever you see as a coach that maybe that footballer needs. And then the dominant or the non-dominant task. So we were always going to be playing with this. And of course, the compensation or the complementary task, you can do them according to what you see, what you need, either in the beginning of the session or also at the end of the session. But always taking into account the subdynamic of the week that you're working on, okay? And the morphocycle is basically it's called morphocycle because it's treating on the forms that matter can become. So we're going to try to shape the week of work and at the same time shape our playing model, okay? Give it form, give it shape. So we want our game model to take a certain shape, and for that some processes must take place during the week. So in this week of training, we are going to be giving shape or form to the playing model. That's why we call it morphocycle, because we want to shape or model the team in a certain way, okay? So Professor Victor Frade calls it a pattern morphocycle, which is a sequence of 1 week of training, which takes into account only the previous and the following matches, and it follows a certain structure so that your team will be on an optimum level to compete over and over again in the competition, okay? And this is the bibliography that we use in Spanish. I try to do it as quickly and as simple as possible. Of course, this is very complicated, but basically showing the differences between, especially the first one, which is a more traditional type of training, and the last two were more modern, contemporary methodologies, which are created by, of course, Francisco Ceirulo and Professor Victor Frade, the two brilliant minds in modern football nowadays, okay? I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, anything you want to ask me or suggest me or give me a suggestion, then the last line, you can see my email. You can write to me there, or you can write to the YouTube channel, and I will try to respond. Please don't forget to share, like, or subscribe if you haven't already, so we can continue to keep creating this material for majority of coaches and assistants and physical trainers that really love to talk about these subjects that we don't see a lot of material, unless maybe books and stuff, okay? Hope to see you again. Take care then. Bye-bye.